The florist was asking me about the table arrangements when my phone vibrated on the counter. I remember glancing at it without thinking much, just a habit, expecting another delivery update or a message from my mother about seating charts. Instead, I saw his name at the top of a thread I didn't recognize. It wasn't my phone. It was his. He had left it there while stepping outside to take a call. Something about finalizing payments with the venue. He trusted me enough not to look. Or maybe he just never considered that I would. The message preview was short, just enough to shift something in me. She asked him if he had told me yet. I didn't open it immediately. I stood there for a few seconds, holding his phone, listening to the florist explaining something about seasonal flowers. I nodded at the right moments. I even smiled once. Then I placed the phone back exactly where it had been. I didn't need to read the rest to understand that something was off. That was the moment things changed, although nothing looked different yet. That evening, I asked him casually how his day had been. He said it was busy, mostly wedding-related things, a few work calls, nothing unusual. His tone was easy, familiar. He asked me the same question, and I answered in the same way. We sat across from each other at the dining table, going over guest confirmations. Everything looked exactly like it should. A few days later, I saw her name again. This time it was on his laptop. He had stepped into the shower and left it open on the couch. I wasn't looking for anything. I was just moving it aside so I could sit. But the screen lit up as I touched it. There was an email thread. Her name was one I knew well enough to recognize immediately, but not closely enough to feel anything personal yet. She had been around before. Same social circle, occasional overlap at events. Someone you greet, not someone you think about later. I didn't open the email either. Instead, I started noticing. It was small at first. The way he checked his phone more often, but never in front of me. The way he started stepping outside for calls that used to happen in the room. The way his answers became slightly shorter, like he was managing conversations instead of having them. Nothing obvious, nothing you could point at. But patterns don't need to be obvious to be real. Around that time, the wedding plans were at their peak. Final fittings, menu tastings, seating arrangements. Both families were fully involved. There were group chats, shared spreadsheets, constant updates. I moved through all of it normally. I went to my dress fitting and stood in front of the mirror while the seamstress adjusted the fabric along my waist. I remember thinking that everything fit perfectly. Nothing needed changing. That detail stayed with me longer than I expected. A week later, I finally read one of the messages. He had fallen asleep on the couch, his phone still in his hand. I gently slid it away so it wouldn't fall, and the screen lit up again. This time, I didn't hesitate. The conversation wasn't new. It had been going on for months. There were no dramatic declarations at the beginning. It started casually, familiar, gradual. Then it shifted. He told her things he hadn't said to me in a long time. Small things, but specific. The kind of details you only share when you're paying attention to someone. And then, further down, it became clear. He wasn't confused. He wasn't drifting. He was in love with her. I read slowly, not rushing through it. I wanted to understand the timeline, not just the feeling. I wanted to know when it started changing and how long I had been standing inside something that had already ended for him. At some point, she asked him what he was going to do about me. He said he was handling it. That was the part that stayed with me. Handling it. The next morning, I made breakfast like usual. He woke up late, apologized for falling asleep on the couch, said he had been exhausted. I told him it was fine. We ate together. We talked about the rehearsal schedule. Nothing in my voice changed. From that point on, I stopped wondering if something was wrong. I knew. And once you know, the question becomes what you're going to do with it. I didn't confront him. I didn't cancel anything. Instead, I continued exactly as planned. Dress fittings, invitations, final payments. If anything, I became more precise. People noticed it. My mother said I seemed unusually calm for someone weeks away from a wedding. His family commented on how organized everything was. I let them think that. Around that time, I reached out to her, not immediately. I gave it a few days, enough time to decide how I wanted to approach it. I didn't message her through social media. I used her email, the one I had seen on his laptop. It felt more intentional that way. I kept it simple. I told her I wanted to talk, just to understand something. No accusations, no details. She responded the next day. She said she was confused, but agreed. We met at a cafe neither of us usually went to. Neutral space. When I saw her, she looked exactly like she always had. Nothing about her suggested that she was standing in the middle of my life without realizing it. We sat across from each other, and for a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she asked me what this was about. I told her his name. The change in her expression was immediate, but not in the way I expected. It wasn't guilt. It was confusion. She said she didn't understand why I was bringing him up. That was when I realized the situation wasn't what I had assumed. I told her we were getting married. I didn't add anything else. She stared at me for a few seconds, processing it. Then she said, very carefully, that she thought we had broken up months ago. She said he told her that it had ended, that things were already over between us. I didn't interrupt her. She kept talking, filling in details without realizing how much she was giving me. From her perspective, this wasn't an affair. This was a relationship that started after mine had ended. The timeline he gave her was clean, simple, logical. It just wasn't real. I asked her how long they had been seeing each other. She told me. It overlapped almost entirely with our engagement. That was the moment everything settled. Not emotionally, logically. There was no misunderstanding left, no missing pieces, just a clear structure of what had happened. We sat there for a while after that, both of us adjusting to the same realization from different sides. She asked me what I was going to do. I told her I hadn't decided yet. That wasn't entirely true, but I wasn't ready to say it out loud. Before we left, I asked her one more thing. I asked if she would be willing to come to the wedding. She hesitated, understandably. I told her she wouldn't have to do anything, just be there. She asked why. I said, because I wanted everything to be honest, at least once. She didn't answer immediately. Then she said she would think about it. In the following days, I continued as usual. Rehearsals, final confirmations, family dinners. He didn't notice anything different, or if he did, he didn't question it. The night before the wedding, she sent me a message. She said she would come. The morning of the wedding was quiet. There's a certain kind of stillness before events like that. Everything is already set, and there's nothing left to adjust. I got ready slowly. Hair, makeup, dress. Everyone around me was focused on details, timing, coordination, making sure everything ran smoothly. I let them handle it. When I looked at myself in the mirror, I didn't feel anything dramatic, just clear. By the time I arrived at the venue, the guests were already seated. I could hear the low sound of conversations from inside. Someone adjusted my veil. Someone else reminded me of the timing for the walk. I nodded. Then the music started. I began walking down the aisle. Everything looked exactly as it was supposed to. He was standing at the altar, looking at me with the same expression he had practiced in mirrors and photographs. Familiar, controlled. Our families were watching. All the effort, all the planning, all the expectations, everything was there, arranged perfectly. I walked halfway, then I stopped. It wasn't abrupt. It wasn't dramatic. I just stopped walking. At first, no one reacted. It took a few seconds for the stillness to register. He looked at me, confused. Someone in the front row shifted slightly. I turned, not toward him, but toward the guests. I scanned the seats until I found her. She was sitting a few rows back, exactly where we had agreed. I lifted my hand slightly and gestured for her to come forward. There was a pause. Then she stood up. The room changed at that moment, not loudly, but noticeably. People started looking between us, trying to understand what was happening. She walked slowly, not confidently, but not hesitantly either, just careful. When she reached the front, she stopped a few steps away from me. Now all three of us were visible in the same space. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't explain everything. I simply said that there was something we all needed to understand clearly, and that it would be easier if we were all standing in the same truth. I turned slightly toward him. I told him that she believed we were no longer together. Then I turned toward her. I told her that we were supposed to be getting married that day. No accusations, no added emotion, just facts. The silence that followed wasn't chaotic. It was heavy. He tried to speak. I could see it in the way he shifted his posture, the way his expression changed as he searched for something to say that would make sense of it. But there wasn't anything he could say that would hold. She looked at him, waiting, not for an explanation, for confirmation. And when it didn't come in a way that aligned with either version of the truth, everything became clear without needing more words. That was the moment the structure collapsed, not loudly, just completely. I didn't stay to watch the reactions. I didn't need to. I stepped back, turned, and walked down the aisle the same way I had come in. The difference was that this time, I wasn't moving toward anything. I was leaving. Behind me, I could hear movement, not shouting, not chaos, just people shifting, adjusting to something unexpected. By the time I reached the end of the aisle, I felt lighter than I expected. Not relieved in a dramatic way, just steady. Outside, the air felt different, simpler. Someone followed me out. I think it was my sister, but I didn't stop walking until I reached the car. I sat there for a moment before starting the engine. No tears, no hesitation, just a clear sense that everything had already ended before that day. I had just made it visible. In the weeks that followed, there were conversations, explanations, questions, attempts to understand what had happened and why I had chosen to handle it that way. I answered what I wanted to answer. I left the rest alone. He tried to reach out. I didn't respond. She sent me one message. She said she hadn't known, and that she was sorry for her part in it, even if it wasn't intentional. I told her I understood, because I did. The situation wasn't built on one person's mistake. It was built on one person's decision to live inside two different versions of reality at the same time. I just removed the separation. A month later, I returned the dress, not because I needed to, but because I didn't want to keep something that had been meant for a moment that no longer existed. The seamstress asked if anything had gone wrong with the fit. I told her no. Everything had fit exactly as it should. That was still true. Sometimes people ask me if I regret not canceling the wedding earlier, if I regret letting it get that far. I don't. Because the point was never to stop it quietly. The point was to make sure it ended honestly. I didn't lose my wedding. I just made sure it belonged to the truth.